Yes, sorry for the delay. A cluttered desk is a sign of a cluttered mind, apparently. It's also a mind that can't make comics, because he can't find the layer that had the bloody model sheet on. It's why, without some sort of spring cleaning of his mind, he is never going to work for 2000 AD and won't be this generation's Dave Gibbons. With that goal in mind, to be this generation Dave Gibbons, I've been using this time of extreme noise to build up my portfolio, improve my skills as a comic book artist so people will hire me to be a comic book artist, hopefully. I've had some successes and I've had two fairly big failings that have wasted more of my time than I care to admit to. But I don't want to be a negative Nelly in this video, so I'm going to be a positive, Poppy, Penny, yes, I'm going to be a positive Penelope. Coin that, that is mine. Lessons were learnt, and what I learned made these pages some of the proudest pages that I am proud of. The pages of this Batgirl versus Red Hood fan comic that I did to prove that I can draw. So, first off, the story. I was having a conversation with my brother, moaning about not having any scripts to draw or some such noise. He suggested that if I want to display my ability to draw, is to take a pre-existing thing and basically rework it. So that's what I did. I took the scene from Watchmen about Rorschach becoming Rorschach, but in my comic it's about Jason Todd becoming the Red Hood and Batgirl chasing after him to stop her friend from becoming Jason Todd, from becoming the Red Hood, to save him from himself. Ultimately, she fails, but it's a simple enough premise, and I get to demonstrate some drawing abilities. And who knows, maybe even have a little fun. I wanted there to be a clear separation between the two characters to begin with, and have that graduation gradually fade as Batgirl fails to save her friend and Red Hood succumb to his more violent impulses. So the most obvious choice would be the panel layout. Batgirl's panels start off as broad, cinematic and non-uniform kind of panel layout. The Red Hood's panels are adhering to the strict 9-panel layout kind of thing. As I'm indicating here, because I can't say this without stumbling over my words, look at the screen, that's what Markus is trying to do. Right. So as the story progresses, the Batgirl's panels become more rigid and more strict, and then by the end of it, we're adhering to the strict 9-panel layout, and the last page is just strictly a 9-panel layout. The next choice is how to style out these panels. The Batgirl is cleaner, crisper, more solid lines, more in keeping with the animated show. I was using the G pen brush for these panels, which has more of a fluid and solid borderline. It's a simple touch that I think works quite effectively. For the Red Hood, I was using more of a janky brush, the G Pen 6, that has more of an early Blade of the Immortal feel. Like, it looks like to me like you've inked over your pencils, rubbed out your pencils, but haven't gone back over your inks to give them more weight. It also bleeds a lot, which is weird for a digital pen. So obviously by the last page, Red Hood succeeded, so everything in that is inked using the G6 pen, which again gives it a different kind of feel and a scratchiness, because darkness has won. The steps I took to make the prep work smart, not hard. The first one, this is kind of an easy one. I'm using the same size of canvas for the prep work that I'm going to be using for the comics. For my comics, I'm using an A4 template by printing.com. The dimensions are in the link below, and I tend to draw at a 600 dpi. I have tried using a 300 dpi to have a smaller file size, but I just can't zoom in enough for me to be happy with. An art tip I picked up from someone else was is you should never zoom in more than 100%, because like, why bother? Your audience isn't going to zoom in 200, 300%. You get lost in the detail that nobody's going to see. Like, you spend an hour drawing this perfect line that when you zoom out and you print, like, you will never see. Art tip from somebody else. The 2000 AD stuff was vertical A4, I think, maybe. I'm not 100% sure. I know that when I've done other prep work and stuff, the canvas size has either been too big or too small. So sticking to one standard canvas size means that I'm not, for whatever reason, using a 75 DPI postcard thing, or like when I've done basic character work on my Samsung Galaxy and imported it over to my computer, I'm not using their tiny dimension sizes. Not that I'm using the Samsung Galaxy anymore because I'm not at work, so I don't need to do sketch work on it. That might have been a complete waste of fucking money. One of the major issues that having a small canvas for your prep work can cause is that your model sheet is too small to be of any bloody use. So say when you're zoomed in like at 100% and you're already pixelated and unable to add any finer details or see any finer details. Another hurdle to a stress-free comic making process is making your designs far too small. Like this building template that I spent hours of my day making, too many hours, for it to be too small to copy, paste and blow up onto the canvas. And before anyone says anything, I know that vectors are a thing, but they aren't for me. I just can't get behind it. So, working with the same size canvas helps with scaling. If my character sheet is too small at 100%, it'll be useless at 50%, and why even bother 33%? A simple solution that made my days a lot easier. Another simple thing to do is to label your layers. I know Clip Studio has layer folders, but I find them confusing as hell, so I tend not to. It's a good habit to get into, because the amount of times I've been scrolling through my layers trying to figure out which layer the soldering pencils for panel 3 are on, well, that mistake was too many times to not look stupid. Art tip from someone else was to make a couple of new layers, fill them with a solid colour, lower the opacity to 0%, and label them sketches, pencils, inks, whatever, like it's a bookmark. So then that way you have a bright colour to help you organise your layers and not get lost and confused and lose your tiny little mind. It's what I've been doing, and it seems to be working. Right, the 3 stages of making a comic. The designing stage, where all your ideas just drop out of your noggin in a creative fever, where the simple fleck of a pencil mark can become towers of the imagination. Then there's the model sheet, where you solidify everything that you need to use as reference, like character sheets and layouts. Then there's the drawing of the comic itself, where everything coalesces into the glorious form of storytelling, expression, and just artistic wonder. Can you guess which one of these is the most bloody tedious? Character turnarounds are tedious, like really tedious, and I hate doing them. I can't tell you why. Maybe it's because in my mind I'm like a rebel man. I'm like, hey, I don't need to follow your rules. I'm an artist. I film without a script. Christ, needless to say, that guy, Christ, he's a dick. He's not Kurt Cobain. And my reference is dated. Am I too old? Should I have been a Death Grips reference? They're pretty loosey-goosey. No. Everyone knows who Kurt Cobain is, Marcus. You stick to it, yo. My refusal to do them meant that I was doing the prep work and character making uppy stuff on the actual page. Like, this is the character sheet I was working on for Cycle of Violence. It's utterly useless. And this is what I was using for the Batgirl vs. Red Hood comic. It's not perfect. It's not a full wraparound. And I need to format these sheets better so that I can have them on my computer screen formatted without already having to zoom in and out. But this character sheet made it easier to draw this comic. Inking the model sheets locks in the final design and helps make simple things like the shape of the nose definitive. Like, is it pointy? Is it rounded? Is it curve up? Does it curve down? These things you learn when you do model sheets, as opposed to not, learning these things. One thing about the last video, it actually helped me, myself and I, by vocalizing that I do consider the inking stage and the pencil stage to be two separate things. It improved my workflow, reduced the amount of stress, it was nowhere near as tedious, and a joyful time was had by me, myself, and I. And finally, the thumbnails. The thumbnails in the Batgirl vs. Red Hood comic are a lot tighter than any other thumbnail I've ever done, and that's because they're the right size for me. Because the dimensions of the thumbnails I was using before, I got off a random comic book artist's Twitter account. They were okay for him, but the dimensions for me were far too small and cumbersome and were of no use. 20 minutes 41. So what I did was I used the rectangle tool in Clip Studio and I made a copy of the canvas, and then holding down Shift I scaled it to an appropriate size for me. I then indicate the halfway lines both vertically and horizontally, and I split it into a 9-panel grid. With this size I can zoom in quite a bit. I can also get pretty detailed. Like in this panel, I pretty much just inked the thumbnail. I also can get in horizon lines, which means I can get background details in. The very basic big shapes of it, not necessarily intricate details, but enough that I can know where the buildings are, for example. Basically, this is my thumbnail at 100%. It's big enough to add details, but small enough to erase and manipulate without having wasted all the hours that your God sent for me to be doing this shit with. It's the difference between it being a squiggle and a sketch. And honestly, it's been a game changer. Like, I've pretty much skipped the sketching stage. It's basically now just thumbs, pencils, and inks. I'm not figuring shit out on the page. It's already there, and if it ain't, 'tis but a moment to go back to the thumbs and correct it. A stress-free Marcus is a happy Marcus. Looking back, the 2000 AD scripts were a motherfucker, and not a lot of fun to do. A simple step of changing the canvas size to be the same as the comic strip as the prep work, staying on top of the labeling of the layers, having a large enough model sheet to be of use, made Wizened Fist a lot easier to do, and the monster in that is proper intricate. And learning from Wizened Fist, Batgirl vs. Red Hood was even easier and more streamlined. And fun. Well, that's an important thing. If it's tedious, then I ain't gonna fucking do it. Or want to do it. The reason I'm waffling on about this is because there are some cool panels in Sorrow Hill and the Cycle of Violence panels that I'm proud of, and to my mind, it's kind of a waste that the stress of making these comics means that I have no intention of finishing these comics. I suppose when 2000 AD reopens their submissions, I can spruce up these pages and have them ready to go. It's actually not a bad idea to have them ready like a year in advance instead of 3 weeks before the deadline closes. Organisation, Marcus. Organisation. That can be a video for further down the road where I've succeeded at something. Oh, aim high, baby, aim high. Yeah. But if there had to be a point to what would otherwise be a wasted month, and if that point was to learn something, well, I believe I learned something of importance. I've done 2 short comics that are good and I'm proud of. They're finished for one thing, and there is only one panel that I truly hate, which out of 54 panels is a pretty good batting average, especially for me, a negative Nelly that I am. This is my favourite panel that I've ever drawn, by the way, to be a positive Penelope. A term that I coined. It's mine. I also applied these lessons to a Hellboy fan comic that I managed to pencil in the quickest time I ever done anything. But that's a story for another video. Maybe next week's video, or next fortnight's video, or next month's video, whenever I get around to making these things. I am not consistent. That's it for today. Thank you for your time. Click like and subscribe if you want to. If you want to see my art in non-crop versions, my Ben Hans page and DeviantArt are linked below. My social media noise is linked below, as well as links to the stuff that I've been advertising throughout this video, as well as my Patreon account. If you want to help in any way, that'd be lovely. I hope you're having a lovely day. And if not, a wise dude once proclaimed, shit happens. Get the whiskey.